everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am incredibly excited to be here today with all of you. I'm going to try to just move us through because it is very hot and we want to celebrate and be in community here as well. You'll hear shortly from a couple of very, very important folks that have gotten us to this point. But I want to just start by saying it has taken us a while to get here. And I don't just mean the long 7 months for our search committee, hosting a thorough and diligent process grounded in community with hundreds of Boston residents weighing in on this very important decision. It has taken us a long time to get here as a city, to a day when a young boy growing up in Roxbury, playing here in this very park, could rise up in the ranks serving his community, gain important leadership experience in another city, then return home to become the next commissioner for the Boston Police Department. We are joined here today by members of our search committee, by elected officials and leaders in our community, across the Boston Police Command staff, across clergy, neighborhood associations. I want to recognize the elected officials who are here with us. City Councilor Tanya Fernandes Anderson, welcome to her district. Thank you for joining us and for your leadership. State Representative Liz Miranda, and District Attorney Kevin Hayden. I think that's who I got here. And thank you so much to all of you for being here. Today I'm excited to introduce Michael Cox as the leader for the Boston Police that our department, our city, and our communities need in this very consequential moment. The task of the Boston Police Department is to deliver public safety through the lens of public health and community trust, and it's not a simple one. It requires collaboration across the department and across our city. Its success depends on effective leadership at every level, including at the very top. That leadership begins with our police commissioner, who sets the tone and standard in ensuring that our officers are living out the department's values each and every day, supporting community members, and building partnerships. They must be someone who understands intimately the consequences of inequity and injustice. And they must be ready and willing to do the work required to not only repair these harms where they exist, but root out the injustice that creates them. Following a rigorous 6-month search and selection process led by our search committee, we have found someone who's ready to take on this responsibility and serve all of Boston's communities. So I want to start by thanking the members of our search committee whose broad range of perspectives on our criminal justice system added to the rigor and intentionality of this important process. Justice Geraldine Hines, who chaired the committee and ran a tight ship, a former justice of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court and former public defender. Bishop William E. Dickerson, senior pastor at Greater Love Tabernacle Church and former longtime chaplain for the Boston Police. Abigail Forrester, who works every day to empower our young people as executive director of Teen Empowerment. Ed Davis III, who served as commissioner of the Boston Police for 7 years. And Professor Jasmine Gonzalez-Rose, who couldn't be here with us today, but who represents all of us in her work at Boston University and at the BU Center for Anti-Racist Research. I also especially want to thank Superintendent-in-Chief and Acting Commissioner Greg Long for his partnership and insights throughout this process and in the many, many months that he has been steering our department and the city. As part of this search, the committee met with community members across Boston to ensure that our next commissioner will reflect the needs, values, hopes, and dreams of our residents. We heard from community leaders and police officers, family members, and our young people, and that process led us to the outstanding individual I'm proud to announce today, our soon-to-be Commissioner Michael Cox. The committee was impressed by the wealth of experience that Chief Cox brings with him to this role, in addition to his creativity and community-oriented approach to public safety. For nearly 3 years, he's been serving as a chief of police in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I had the chance to speak directly with leaders in Ann Arbor to apologize to them, but also to hear how much he has impacted that community, about his stellar leadership in building communities, in being a sounding board, in partnering across the spectrum, in following what is happening across the country, taking the best practices, and constantly innovating to provide supports through his leadership. Before that post, he served for 30 years with the Boston Police Department, gaining experience across every bureau in the department. Chief Cox was raised right here in Roxbury and also lived in Dorchester for years. And we are so glad to be welcoming him home to Boston, a city and community he knows so well. Having grown up here, having served in all of the roles within the department and elsewhere, he is uniquely positioned to build the public safety infrastructure that Boston deserves and continue building on the community trust and community policing that our city has led on for decades. This infrastructure will focus on addressing the causes of crime, prioritizing the health and safety of all of our residents, and driven by and rooted in our community. Of course, our work doesn't end with today's appointment, because rebuilding trust and ensuring the health and safety of all our residents is an ongoing process. It's a responsibility that we share across city government. And so thank you again to our search committee, for our communities, for making sure we selected the best possible person for what is one of the hardest jobs in this city. Chief Cox will officially return to the Boston Police Department as Commissioner Cox on August 15th. I want to once again thank our acting commissioner, Greg Long, for all of his advice and partnership and so much that he's had to take on in just the short time that I've been in this office, and for his continuing leadership at the department as he will stay as superintendent-in-chief for this department. Thank you, Greg, for your continued service. And to the command staff. And I want to thank the Cox family, some of whom I know are here today from all over, because we know that this service is a family service and a family sacrifice. And so we're so thankful to you for giving us this chance to have the leader that we need. Okay, before I pass the mic to our next police commissioner, otra vez en español. Buenos días, gracias a todos por estar aquí el día de hoy. La tarea del Departamento de Policía de Boston es ofrecer seguridad pública a través del lente de la salud pública y la confianza de la comunidad. No es una tarea sencilla. Requiere la colaboración de todo el departamento y toda la ciudad. Y su éxito depende de un liderazgo eficaz, el liderazgo del departamento. Ese liderazgo comienza con nuestro comisionado de policía. Nuestro comisionado debe comprometerse a reconstruir la credibilidad y la confianza trabajando en colaboración con todas nuestras comunidades. Debe ser alguien que comprenda íntimamente las consecuencias de la inequidad y la injusticia. Y deben estar preparados y dispuestos a realizar el trabajo necesario, no solo para reparar estos daños, sino para erradicar la injusticia que los crea. Después de un riguroso proceso de búsqueda y selección de 6 meses en colaboración con nuestro comité de búsqueda, estoy emocionada de anunciar que hemos encontrado a alguien que está preparado para asumir esta responsabilidad y servir a todas las comunidades de Boston. Me gustaría dedicar un momento a agradecer a los miembros de nuestro comité de búsqueda, cuya amplia gama de perspectivas sobre nuestro sistema de justicia penal contribuyó al rigor y la intencionalidad de este importante proceso. La jueza Geraldine Hines, ex jueza del Tribunal Judicial Supremo de Massachusetts, el obispo William Dickerson, pastor principal de la iglesia Greater Love Tabernacle, Abigail Forrester, que trabaja con jóvenes como director ejecutivo de Teen Empowerment, Edward Davis, que fue comisionado del Departamento de Policía de Boston por 7 años, y Jasmine González Rose, profesora de la Facultad de Derecho de la Universidad de Boston y del Centro de Investigación Antirracista de la Universidad. También quiero dar gracias al superintendente en jefe Greg Long por su colaboración y su liderazgo a lo largo de ese proceso y durante el último año y medio. Este proceso nos ha llevado a la excelente persona que me orgullece anunciar hoy como próximo comisionado del Departamento de Policía de Boston, Michael Cox. Por casi 3 años ha servido como jefe de policía en Ann Arbor, Michigan. Y antes de eso, sirvió 30 años en el Departamento de Policía de Boston, adquiriendo experiencia en todas las oficinas del departamento. El jefe Cox se crió en Roxbury y vivió en Dorchester durante años. Estoy deseando trabajar con él y con toda la policía de Boston para regimar lo que es posible cuando adoptamos un enfoque orientado a la comunidad y de salud pública para la seguridad pública en nuestra ciudad. And now I'd like to introduce our next Boston Police Commissioner, Michael Cox.
Thank you all. You know, thank you. You know, it's hot out here, so I won't talk long, you know, but I do consider this a homecoming. You know, I wish my mother was still alive to see it. I grew up at the house right at the end of the corner, and I did spend a lot of time in this park growing up. You know, and all people should be able to spend time in parks without worrying about crime or fear of crime and things of that nature. And so that is something we're going to look forward to. But first I wanted to start off by thanking the mayor. You know, Mayor Wu I didn't know very well. But in the short time that, you know, we've come to talk and meet, I realized that our visions are in line. You know, her vision for the city is very much how I see the vision for the police department. When we talk about things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, well, you know, that's very important for the police department. You know, the police department needs to look like the communities of which we serve. You know, police departments need to include every resident to hear how, you know, you want to be police, what's important to you, what you're afraid of, what you need, you know, so we can serve you better. So we're going to, you know, re-emphasize and go back to some of our, you know, community policing, you know, basics, you know, that we've been very good at in the past, and make sure we start to implement that again. COVID's been tough for everyone, but the reality is that we need each other, and we need to be around people, and officers need to get out of their cars and start to move around and actually engage residents again. You know, most of you all might know me from at least newspaper clippings about an incident that happened in 1995. You know, and clearly, you know, I was a victim of some unconstitutional policing. You know, no different than probably incidents that have happened throughout the country to black and brown, you know, people in general. But the reality is, you know, I was a victim of that, but that's not who I am.
All right.
You know, I took on public service because I wanted to help the public. I wanted to give back to the communities of which I live. You know, like so many other officers that I know that work on this job and still work on this job. Right? But the reality is every once in a while these things happen, and that narrative, it gets taken over by these individuals. And so after this incident happened, I had a choice: either, you know, quit, leave, or stay. You know, and I chose to stay because I believe in policing in a community-friendly way. And I know the men and women that I work with believe in that same thing too. And the reality is me leaving was not going to help. So I spent all my time and effort not talking about it at the time, because for those who know me, this is probably the most they probably ever heard me talk. But the reality is my goal was to learn and grow and be a model for the police department and the people into the police department to make sure that kind of incident never happened again. You know, and so I did a lot. I went back to school multiple times. I got multiple degrees. I worked in multiple areas within the police department, all trying to learn the best way to help and grow and make this department better, right? And so I spent another 24 years after that incident in the police department, right, with a bunch of men and women that work hard every day to serve you all. You know, and we're going to make sure that you get to know who they are, that you get to know, you know, what it is that we can do to help your lives get better. You know, we are going to, you know, give back in so many different ways. We're going to be present in every community. We're going to get to know the cultures of all the people that we serve to make sure we never make a mistake and confuse someone's culture from behavior that's considered criminal in some way, shape, or form. We need to understand the people that we police and the communities that we police so we never have any unintended consequences. And so I know the men and women of our department are truly, thank you very much. It is hot out here. You know, I know the men and women in our department are truly gifted in so many different ways. There's so many gifted people in this department, you know, and we are going to highlight all of them. We're going to highlight the good work that they do. We're going to get them to reintroduce themselves to the public after this pandemic in a lot of ways, right? And then we're going to do it in an equitable way, so we make sure that we never over-police, that we make sure that we're always respectful and mindful of the ways in which people in each community want us to police. So internally within the police department, for the men and women that are here, you know, we're going to support you to death. We're going to make sure that you're developed. We're going to make sure that you have all that you need to do this job. You know, but we're also going to hold you accountable for all the things that we ask you to do. But that comes with the job, as you know, right? But the reality is, I know the men and women of the Boston Police Department will step up, both civilian and sworn, to make sure that we serve the public well, particularly in this city, right? The city where I'm from and so many other folks are from. So, you know, again, I didn't say I was going to talk long, and I'm going to try not to because I'm about to burst here. But the reality is we're going to do some things in a different way. We're going to make sure that the officers are supported, you know, that their wellness is supported, that they're out there. It's good for them to be engaged with the public again so they can get to know all the good officers that work here. We're going to get feedback from our communities to hear it and own when we've done wrong. You know, there's some history here, right? It's hard to move forward unless you acknowledge some of that history, right? And we'll acknowledge it. But the fact is, we're always trying to move forward to make sure we serve the citizens of Boston well. So, you know, it's a whole list of things that we'd like to do, and I'm about to explode right now. But I just want to thank the mayor for giving me this opportunity to come back home and to serve the citizens of Boston. And a quick note for the, you know, for those men and women in the Ann Arbor Police Department in the city of Ann Arbor, I just want to thank them for the opportunity that they gave me to come and serve that community. It's a smaller city, but it's always been listed as one of the best cities in America. Unfortunately, Boston's the best city in America, so. But I appreciate all the hard work that the men and women of Ann Arbor do every day to make sure that they serve those citizens as well. So that's all my prepared statements, and I go to take some questions. Thank you.
I want to recognize also that City Councilor Brian Worrell has joined us. Thank you so much, Councilor. And also the Director of our Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, Stephanie Everett, is here. Thank you, Director Everett. And now we'll hand it over to Chief Justice Hines and the Justice Hines. I think of her as chief of everything that I need to do. Justice Hines and the members of the search committee to say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. I am so proud and honored to be here and to say that Michael Cox is the fruit of our labors to find the best possible person for this moment in time in our history in the city of Boston. We have faith and trust in you, and we know that our faith and our trust will be rewarded if you have the support of the department and the support of the city of Boston. And we all look forward to working with you and making the miracles happen that you want to make happen. Thank you for accepting the call.
Yeah, I want to thank Mayor Wu for her leadership, and I want to also thank her for having the confidence in us. And I want to thank my committee members, especially Justice Hines, for doing such an outstanding job. We didn't always agree upon things, but we knew how to connect with each other because we wanted what was best for Boston. I want to thank Michael Cox for accepting, and each one of us had our own list, you know, as we move towards the final candidates. And he was on my list, and he was on most of the list of the people that we are standing with as committee members. So I think of him, when I think of Michael, I think of integrity. When I think of Michael, I think of resilience. When I think of Michael, I think of someone who is tolerable of other people. And I also think of the joy and enthusiasm that he shared in terms of coming back to Boston, a place where he was raised and even played in this park. And so big ups to the Cox family and to all those that look at this as a bright day for Boston. But of course, this cannot be just about window dressing. Just as Michael Cox will hold the police officer accountable, we'll hold him accountable. And so I'm glad to know that he's up for the challenge and up for the moment in regards to all the challenges and the vicissitudes that we deal with from day to day. He's up for it, and I thank God for each one of you all that are here. And let us move forward because we have to work together. It doesn't take just one person, but we all have to work together and do our part. God bless you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the mayor for selecting me to be on this committee. It has been a humbling honor to be on this committee with my esteemed colleagues here. I'd like to thank Justice Hines for just holding us to the fire in this process. But this has been a different process. You know, the city hasn't seen a process like this to select a commissioner since I've been born, and I grew up in this city. And my role was to really be present for the young people and the voices that I've heard from young people about the pain that they have felt at the hands of law enforcement from time to time. Although we know there's great officers out there like Nora Baston, who continues to support our community and our young people. Give her a hand as well. I want to recognize her and Eddie Crispin and others. But this process has been really a process where we held ourselves to the fire and held ourselves to the integrity of the words that we heard from the community, from members of the police department. And I am just grateful for the fact that we've chosen somebody who's from the Berry, because a lot of people who's from the Berry feel like the Berry is Boston. And so welcome, Michael Cox, and congratulations. And hopefully from this time forward, there'll be young people in this city who feels like this department is the department that not only serves them, but cares about them. So congratulations not only to Michael Cox and the mayor, but to our community at large. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank the mayor for allowing me to be involved in this great process, and my fellow committee members under the leadership of Justice Hines, Abigail, the Bishop, Jasmine. We all work together, and quite frankly, a lot more in agreement than in disagreement in this process. It was a very much a learning experience for me. I'd love to hear from the community who said, in large part, we want someone who has internal experience, somebody who knows the city of Boston, and who better to pick than Michael Cox, a man that grew up right here, right in the heart of Roxbury. It is just an incredible honor to be able to meet and talk to Michael. I shouldn't say meet, talk to Michael again after the many years that I spent working with him when he was a deputy superintendent and a superintendent here in the Boston Police Department. He had a sharp intellect. He was a man that could tell me what was happening on the street and communicate to me what the neighborhoods were looking for, and that was really helpful to me when I was commissioner. So it's a thrill to have him here. But even more importantly, as you heard today, he's reached out to the men and women of the police department. The mayor said this is a consequential time for policing. There has been no more consequential time in my lifetime than today. And we are giving the reins of this police department over to a man that will serve the community and the police officers, men and women who do the work, dangerous work out there day to day, very well. So congratulations, Michael. Thank you very much.
I know it's very, very hot and sunny. Let's take a few questions for the chief or search committee members or me, and if there are more, I can follow up with everyone on the side, and so we can all go seek some shade.
So, you know, I talked a little bit about COVID. You know, the last certainly 3 years has been tough. And so the isolation from COVID, I would imagine the protest, the fact that we're telling officers not to be around people and people not to be around people, right? So trying to get people back out into the communities, reestablish some of the bonds and ties that we had before, create new ones, partner with other people to figure out exactly what's going on. Time changed, things change, right? But we need to get out and figure out what's going on. What does the public need from us? What are their fears, desires, and what do they want from us? So we can learn from that, so we can adjust to it. And it's important for the officers as well, because when officers go into the public and talk to them, they're people too. They like to talk to people. They want, they work out here every single day. They want to share their lives with the residents that are here. We're all people in a lot of ways. And so as we get to understand each other and know each other better, we'll find so much more common ground. And some of the misunderstandings that happen from time to time, maybe they don't occur. And some of the things that we need to understand, we'll start to understand them better. And so that's first and foremost, they're trying to get people just out of their vehicles, back in the communities. And Boston's a different place. In 3 years since I've been here, I've run around recently. There's communities that didn't even exist 3 years ago that exist now. So just for me, I'm saying, just to go out and, meet those residents, go out and see what issues are in each neighborhood, because each neighborhood is different. And so first and foremost, I would say that's one of the ways. And then we can do things different in the future, whether we have community CommStats or all kind of ways in which we get the public involved in policing and educating them on what we do. Policing needs to be demystified. People need to understand what we do so we can do it better. And then we can change when you're dealing with more educated folks and we're using the same terms and understanding about certain things. So.
Okay, why don't we do one each, and then okay, let's go here. All right, let's go here.
Can you talk about transparency? What will you do different there? Will the public see mug shots, have even more access to the information on what happens on the streets?
Mug shots, you mean referring to suspects?
Transparency in the police department. What will you do differently to Boston Police?
And that's I think our communication needs to be better in a lot of ways. And give me a second to get there to actually review some of this stuff, because I don't want to criticize some people that are doing great work just because of my ignorance, right? So I want to be slow to criticize and fast to learn, before I make any comment. But transparency is good. Officers work hard. This is a hard job. This is a hard job at any level. And the reality is most people don't understand, some of the aspects of policing. But also there's a reality is sometimes police don't understand the issues and problems in communities and how we're perceived. And so those two need to match up a lot better. We need to learn from one another so we can be way more responsive in a way that we're never over-policing or under-policing because of these misunderstandings. And in that way, it'll help keep Boston safer. People will feel safer. Officers will be able to do more. It'll prevent more crime in general. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, in my opinion.
I'd like to hear from
1, 2, 3, and then we'll
I'd like to hear from the commissioner and the mayor about the incident in Ann Arbor where your management style came under question. You were suspended for a period and had to apologize. And at that time, the council wanted to fire you. So what should we know? 7-4, I understand they voted at the time. But that was while it was under investigation. What should we know about why your management style fits Boston? If for a short time it didn't fit there.
So I came from a big department to a very small department. I went from the East Coast to the Midwest. Even my accent was different for a lot of folks. And the reality is that sometimes people can be offended by people just because of differences sometimes, right? Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a fairly thoughtful person. I don't really swear. I don't really, intimidation is not me, usually, right? But yet I can be perceived that way. And coming from Boston and going to a place, that was a learning experience for me about it's not the same place. The Midwest is a little different than the East Coast. And I learned from that. And I made some mistakes, and I owned up to mistakes. But the reality is there was no atmosphere of hostility or anything like that. It was just a misinterpretation and a young police chief making some mistakes. Yeah.
We conducted a very, very thorough, vetting process, multi-week process, many conversations, every single document that existed in Boston and Ann Arbor, I have reviewed, and our investigators also spoke with many people involved in any of the documentation. I also personally spoke with the mayor and town administrator and have heard nothing but praise and regret that he might leave. They have said that in Ann Arbor, Chief Cox has been the consummate professional, so warm and welcoming to the entire community, drawing on what happens around the country to make that department better. And I know that what I heard from them reinforces exactly what we already know from his time in Boston, that he is a leader of great integrity who takes his leadership incredibly seriously with strong intention to empower the people around him. And I'm so excited to work with him in this role.
Chief, you arrive here, you come back here amid calls to defund the police, reduce your budget. How do you answer that call?
So no one's said that to me as of yet, and so I'm not going to, hopefully it doesn't come, but the reality is it's, policing is expensive because the fact is we always need to be prepared. There's things that we need to do to develop and grow. There's technology we need to, use and to help us do our job in different and better ways. And unfortunately, that costs money from time to time, And so I'm usually not for, defunding something when you're trying to make it better, when you're trying to get better in general. Does medicine get better when you defund it? Does schools get better when you get defunded? Show me a scenario where there's an institution anywhere in the world where it gets better when you don't fund it, right? I'm saying, we need to be supported and developed in that way so we can, grow and get better, and that's what I'm going to try to do. So I don't control the budgets. That's city council, that's the mayor, but the reality is, I'm going to use all the resources we have to make sure that we are a well educated police department that know best practices, that are developed, and that the officers are well in coming to work day in, day out, so they can serve the citizens well and actually take feedback from the citizens. So.
In Ann Arbor, I'm sure you experienced this to some extent, but one of the effects of the pandemic is that a lot of communication within communities has moved online. So especially among younger people, you see Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram being used as major forums for relationship building and for communication. I'm wondering how, with your approach to community policing, you plan to tackle these groups of people that may not be in the streets where you're used to seeing them 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and that's a place that we, a space where we need to get a lot better in. I personally need to. I don't even have a social media site and things of that nature. So that's something we're going to look to address to make sure that we're, getting feedback, making observation, being able to communicate, particularly with younger folks, to understand what's going on. And so that's something I think that we need to address and try to make sure that we have a communication plan and something to address all the various means of which people communicate nowadays.
Are you going to keep covering up sexual misconduct in the police department? That's a good question. Keep quiet. Okay.
What is the city's response to the allegations of...
Okay. La pregunta sobre el 24 horas de labor para el departamento. Esta es una situación que no es segura o sana para los miembros del departamento, y es una situación que necesita la atención del departamento y todos los líderes en colaboración. En un momento con muchos eventos en la ciudad, necesitamos los planes y preparación para crear un medio ambiente laboral que es sostenible para todos los miembros de la ciudad, de la policía y también de todos los otros departamentos también. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll go up to the side. Thank you. All right, that's good.
That's good.
Thank you. Okay, let's. We're going to do some gathering with residents here, and I can do a scrum off to the side if folks are interested.